You know, I'm very fortunate in my life to have never had to witness the devastation of war firsthand. My grandfather described the horror of his experience in World War I to me. My dad and my uncle and other veterans shared their experiences of World War II as well. But I thank God that I just lucked out, I guess, came of age after the Vietnam War and before these endless wars in the Middle East. So I never saw the devastation that comes with war, and I guess most of us have not, unless we are recent veterans or older veterans. The prophet Isaiah, however, lived in a period when his land, Judah, was under constant threat of war from Syria and Samaria nearby, and from the expanding Assyrian Empire on the horizon. In 722, he witnessed the fall of the northern kingdom of Israel to Assyria. And in 701, he probably witnessed the Assyrians invading Judah too, and laying siege to Jerusalem itself. Needless to say, it was a dark time, full of violence and the threat of violence. Yet when you hear Isaiah's words from today's reading, they are remarkably filled with hope. I have to wonder if these words came to the prophet as he was looking out over some devastated part of his country or city, homes destroyed, forests and fields burned. I imagine him full of despair, meditating on the stump of a once beautiful tree. When suddenly this vision comes to him. On this humbled ground, a tiny shoot, hopeful and promising, will sprout from the stump of David's line, the line of the kings of Judah. A branch will emerge from those ancient roots to bear fruit in the form of a new leader, a child. And on this child from David's line, the Spirit of the Eternal One will rest. Beyond the devastation of his time, Isaiah saw a future. And not just any future, but one in which kings would fulfill their divine calling to judge the poor with fairness and decide with equity for the meek of the earth. It reads in Isaiah. A future in which peace will break out in unexpected ways, and no one will hurt or destroy anywhere on God's holy mountain, for the earth will be full of the knowledge of God like the waters cover the sea. It was a crazy thing to declare in the midst of the devastation of those days. But I guess that's part of a prophet's job description. Be crazy. When things look good, warn everyone that bad things are on the horizon. And when things look really, really bad, declare that impossibly good things are on the way. In other words, afflict the comfortable and comfort the afflicted, as the journalist Peter Dunn once wrote. In the church, Advent season is full of these strange wilderness voices crying out from the devastated margins and corners of the world, crying out a warning, yet speaking hope and peace to us as well. Crying out about an end of things as we know them, yet also the chance for a fresh start. In those days, John the Baptist appeared in the wilderness, proclaiming, "Repent, turn around, change, for God's new order, God's realm has come near." In Advent season, we participate in this counterintuitive narrative too, with all kinds of symbolic seasonal traditions meant to awaken us to the possibilities of Isaiah's tree stump and John's dirty yet holy river water. We light candles against the growing darkness. And as the world around us turns cold and brown, we bring greenery into our homes and churches and public places as a sign that in the midst of winter's devastation, life persists. Life will return. Life is still there. In his little book, The Soul of Christmas, Thomas More wrote that ordinary modern people would feel the necessity to do such an odd thing, bring a wild tree into their polished parlors, proves that the religious spirit is still breathing in us. For all its simplicity, the tree is a ritual object of great power. It gives us the hopeful message that life endures and that in the midst of darkness, there is a reason to go on and to be of good cheer. It's also a reminder to us of the biblical tree of life, a sign and symbol of God's abundance and the power of resurrection, which is nothing less than the unbreakable power of God's love toward the world. All over the world, many of us walk into this season in the midst of our own crises of loss and devastation. All over the world, there are others who join us as we struggle with inadequate income or health care, job loss, broken relationships, chronic pain, illness, loneliness, or any number of things, including just an undefined sense of alienation. Meanwhile, the times we live in are full of violence and the threat of violence. I don't have to tell you this. Mass shootings and acts of terror, to be sure, but also political institutions undermined and policies that promote fairness around the world gutted. Above all, there is environmental devastation beyond our comprehension. Rainforests burning, oceans acidifying, species disappearing, beloved trees dying to disease and invasive insects. So we may not be ravaged by war here in the United States, but we are still aware, however dimly, of devastating forces at work in our world. No wonder the December darkness feels deeper and colder than usual sometimes. Advent is a time of waiting that echoes the long, deep ache of our hearts for a new kind of world to dawn. Yet in the midst of this long night, like Isaiah, we're offered an unexpected vision. A tiny green shoot springing up from a dead stump, the simple power of water to cleanse and renew, the birth of a child who awakens us to a new way to live in relation to one another with mercy and justice toward all. The point of this season is not simply to make us feel a little better for a little while, a little more hopeful or peaceful or compassionate for a few short weeks before we get back to the daily mundane grind of life. I mean, it does serve that purpose, gives us a break from the grind, but that's not the point. The point is to help us see the light that is still dawning out there on the horizon of our world and to remind us of our place in God's possibilities for our lives and our world. After all, Jesus didn't say, "Blessed are the peaceful," right? Jesus said, "Blessed are the peacemakers. Happy are the peacemakers." Because the true light that enlightens everyone has already dawned, each one of us has a calling and the ability to be a voice in the wilderness, proclaiming hope in our world in some way, small or large. Because the true light that enlightens everyone dawns now within us, each one of us has a calling and the ability to be an agent for change in our world, creating peace and promoting equity in some way, small or large. Because even now, dawn is breaking somewhere out on the edge of the world. We can live and act with hope, knowing that the greening of the world has already begun, here and now, within us. The Christmas spirit, wrote Ann Weems, is that hope which tenaciously clings to the hearts of the faithful and announces in the face of any Herod the world can produce, and all the indoors slammed in our faces or in the faces of our neighbors, and all the dark nights of our souls, that with God all things still are possible, that even now unto us a child is born.